Welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. Hi, I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance to working Rhode Island families. This evening's edition will host Legislative Issues with Jim Parisi, where we bring the legislature into your living room. We hope you enjoy this edition of Legislative Issues and Labor Vision.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision, where we bring the General Assembly right into your living room. My name is James Parisi. I'm a field representative with the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, and I'm your host this evening. In the past several weeks, we've had a couple of different guests come in to our studio to talk about different bond issues that are going to be on the November 4th ballot. And this evening, we're going to concentrate on one specific bond issue. It's bond issue number 7, question 7. And I'm pleased to have two new guests to our show. Jeremy Goodman with the Roger Williams Park Zoo. Thank you for joining us, Jeremy.
My pleasure.
And Bob Seguino with the Rhode Island Clean Water Finance Agency.
That's Bill, and that's correct.
So, gentlemen, before we talk about the bond issue itself, it's always good to get a little bit of background. Jeremy, how long have you been with the zoo?
I moved up to Rhode Island to take the position of executive director at the zoo a little over a year ago, last summer, and it's been a great move. Family and I, we love Rhode Island, and the zoo is one of the historic zoos in the country, and it's a phenomenal place, so we're really excited about things.
I relate to that because I'm a transplant from New York myself 20 years ago, and I think people who are not from Rhode Island appreciate the state more than the people who were born here.
It is a wonderful state, a lot of natural resources here.
And before you were working at Roger Williams Park Zoo, what were you doing?
I was the director of a zoo in New Jersey, and similar size, a little smaller, but you know, we did great things there, turned that zoo around, and it was really an economic engine for the community and for the state, so expect to do the same thing here in Rhode Island.
Terrific. Bill, there's probably not too many viewers who know what your agency is, let alone what your agency does. Why don't you give our viewers a 2-minute introduction into your agency and what role you play in our state's natural resources?
Sure. I'm the executive director for the Rhode Island Clean Water Finance Agency, and we're probably one of 48 similar agencies across the country. There's usually one in every state, and we administer the state revolving loan fund for clean water and drinking water. And the legislature also gave us roads and bridges in 2013. So in terms of what we do is we get a capitalization grant from the federal government. It's matched by funds similar to what we have coming up in the bond issue by 20% with the state. And we turn around and we issue short-term, not short-term, but long-term notes to cities and towns to borrow for sewer improvements. And some do sewer. We have a separate revolving fund for water. And just recently, as I said, we have a small revolving fund for roads and bridges. And in our 25-year history, which is 25 this year, we have lent out somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.1 billion for clean water projects, similar to what we're talking about on this bond issue, and about $350 million in drinking water projects. So, and we're AAA rated, probably the only one in the state, and that goes a long way when we try to sell bonds.
Another good point to emphasize in this great state of Rhode Island. Before you were with the agency, what did you do, Bill?
In my previous life, I was town manager of East Greenwich. I was manager there for 25 years. Generally, my career has been as a manager. I graduated from URI and have done similar jobs in North Carolina, Kentucky, Massachusetts, and came home to roost. And as Jeremy says, we all miss Rhode Island. So we came home 25 years ago.
Sure. So we've had a couple of guests on this show talking about a couple of different bond issues. We had Scott Duhamel on the show with the Building and Construction Trades Council talking about 1 and 2, which deals with gambling, the transportation hub, URI, and he also mentioned and talked about question 7. And we also had Paul Harrington, Fuzzy Harrington, with the Transit Union talking about the transportation hub. But your bond issue, question 7, is an amalgamation of a couple of different projects, and I think our viewers would really benefit from knowing some of the details. What will be funded by the state if voters vote yes on 7. Jeremy, why don't I start with you? What is in it for the zoo and the people who love the zoo, as well as people who love Roger Williams Park if they vote yes on 7?
Sure. Directly for the zoo, what the public will see are brand new exhibits, a brand new education center. We do a lot of education over at the zoo, and our current facility is not keeping up with the demand. We educate over 140,000 kids every year. We go over 800 schools, and so a new education center is very critical. But besides the brand new exhibits, a new rainforest building, reptile house, really this is about economic development, and this money bring jobs to Rhode Island, construction jobs, direct jobs, induced jobs, as well as bring tourism to the state. All these new exhibits will attract significant tourism. The average new exhibit will bring approximately 15% increase in attendance, and based off of our out-of-state numbers, over the course of 4 years, that's about 54,000 people coming into Rhode Island, spending their money, not only at the zoo, but at our shops, at our restaurants, and in our communities. So really, what the public will see is brand new, wonderful exhibits that they can come and enjoy, new education center, but deeper down, it really is about helping stimulate the economy and bring jobs to Rhode Island and tourism to Rhode Island.
I know any type of attraction like a zoo, you have to always be current. You always need new things to attract, old visitors as well as garner some new visitors. So you have a home for reptiles now. Why don't you let our viewers know what's in store with the new construction should it be approved?
Sure. We don't actually have a reptile house. There isn't a single one in all of New England. So we would be really the first one. So it'd be quite the attraction that would draw people from all around. Our rainforest building is currently built in 1929, and it's really seen better days. And it's kind of a dark, very concrete building. We're looking at building something bright and airy, full of live plants and animals, monkeys, birds, amphibians, all sorts of strange, unique, and rare creatures. So we're really looking at delivering the most up-to-date current exhibits. Roger Williams Park Zoo is one of the oldest zoos in the country. It's probably about the 3rd oldest. It depends on your zoo history. It's somewhere between 3 and 5, but it's been around a long time, and that has challenges. Obviously, we have a lot of older infrastructure, and this money will be put towards updating things as well as adding new and exciting exhibits.
Will some buildings come down to make room for new construction? And what does the transition look like for people who visit the zoo?
Sure. One building will come down. The old Tropics building, it's getting ready to come down on its own, so that's one of the reasons it's desperately needed. So people will see over time, we'll be designing all the new projects over the next year, and we'll be in the ground, ready for construction, assuming everyone votes yes on 7 and we get it passed, we'll be in the ground for construction for 2016.
And finally, before we turn our attention to some of the other projects, the education programs. Could you give our viewers a sense on what kind of education programs you offer, and what new and different things will you be able to do with a new facility dedicated to education?
So we have an incredible education department, some of the best educators, environmental educators in the state, if not the country. And right now we operate out of a small circular building that divides with a couple of wall dividers into 3 pie wedges, but not very good sound restriction, inhibition in the classrooms. So the new building should have, we're hoping, 6 new classrooms, and just really be a great place for kids and adults to learn. Our education programs span from toddlers and infants all the way up through adults. We have adult wine and cheese education lectures, but we also have very hands-on mommy and me type programs and great teen programs where we're really inspiring the next generation of conservationists and environmentalists.
Terrific. Well, thank you for that. Bill, let's talk about the other aspects of question 7. So what amount of money will be in play that would benefit Rhode Island should 7 be approved related to your agency?
Well, related to the agency, we are listed in the bond issue for $20 million. And the $20 million is there primarily to increase our capacity. Our lending capacity on an annual basis is somewhere between $80 and $90 million a year for clean water projects, for which this bond issue, as you know, starts out with clean water. And one of our biggest borrowers, the Narragansett Bay Commission, as you know, built a combined sewer overflow tunnel in the city of Providence, and that was a huge success. That was probably a $500 million project. We probably loaned close to 50% of that, and they still have another tunnel to build. Not Warren, but Warwick, if you've read in the paper, has recently voted to expand their sewer system, so we're doing that. Probably one of the more visible projects that we've funded, you can see when you're on 95. If you remember, the Warwick sewage treatment plant was underwater during 2010, and there's a berm that goes around that plant. Together with FEMA and a $7 million loan from the agency, they're raising the berm around the sewage treatment plant so it won't flood again. So we're kind of proud of those projects. Some of that $20 million we get because of the way we borrow money and lend money, we're able to put $3 to $4 on the street for every dollar we get over time, because we do a direct loan, and then as the payments come back, we can issue bonds to further increase the pot in the revolving fund, and we would do that. Some of the things you may be interested in that some of our requirements is we require everybody to have a single audit, which the federal government requires us to do that. But all the funds that we administer, Davis-Bacon applies, prevailing wage applies, Buy American and Steel applies. So it's a pretty local issue, and I think the way the EPA has set it up, it's an issue that affects everybody. We estimate, together with DEM, who's also in the bond issue, that for every $1 million we put on the street, that's probably 5 jobs that we create. So when you take a look at what we've done over the past, that $1.1 billion, we've added a lot to the economy in terms of how we've borrowed money and what have you. And the return that we have gotten, that $1.1 billion, comes from about $250 million in EPA grants and $45 million in state matching grants. So we've turned that money around very well, and we look to do it again. I haven't been here for the other 24 years of the agency, but in my first year here, we've done quite well getting money out on the street.
I know we've had in this studio Scott Duhamel, Mike Sabatoni, and others talking about the unemployment rate in building and construction trades and how hungry their members are for work. Once the money is available, will there be a fairly quick turnaround between voter approval and getting money out there and construction going? I
think it'll take us probably a year to get the money that we're talking about right now, but that we will have an $80 million bond issue going out on the street probably after the first of the year, which will contribute to some of those projects. As I said, if our capacity would meet our demand, then we'll kick in the $20 million and make it go a little bit further.
Sure. Are there any specific projects that you've earmarked for this bond issuance, or is it really just a necessary flow of money to keep a variety of different projects going on in our state?
That's it, exactly. We don't have it earmarked for anyone other than I've indicated that we know Narragansett Bay is coming in, we know Warwick is coming in. This $20 million will increase our lending capacity so that all the other communities and these other agencies can, hopefully we'll be able to fund them and meet their demand with our capacity.
And should voters approve question 7, $20 million bond authority for your agency, and it's dedicated for
Clean
both
water.
clean water.
Not drinking water, but clean water. A little misnomer there, but clean water.
Terrific. I know in addition to the $15 million for the zoo, there's also $3 million in this bond issue dedicated for the park itself. Your zoo is located in the park. What would we see happening in Roger Williams Park should the voters say yes on 7?
Sure, Roger Williams Park is really a state treasure, and just like the zoo is, and the money's really going to be towards restoring some of the infrastructure, some of the roadways that have seen better days, and some of the bridge work, things along those lines. So things that people use every day, going in and out through the park. It'll really, once again, be putting people to work, getting all those jobs done, all the paving jobs and all the construction jobs. But something that everybody that goes through the park will directly benefit for.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of question 7. Not only does it benefit the community at large by maintaining and improving our amenities, but it also will put people to work, which is so important when we're sitting here as the state with the 3rd highest unemployment in the country.
Absolutely, and the bond. I mean, obviously, from a clean water standpoint, everybody needs clean water. I mean, most of Rhode Island's economy, really does revolve around clean water. We are the ocean state, and whether it's sailing, fishing, going to the beach, that's all part of tourism, and it really does. Even though it's good for the environment, it's also great for the economy. So it really is a great win-win situation for everybody.
I haven't heard many detractors. I haven't heard any detractors about question 7. If you just have a minute to talk to people, Bill, what do you tell people why any voter who's probably paying more attention, if they're paying attention at all, to the election of candidates than they are bond issues? How do you really focus people on question 7?
Well, when I run into them, probably 2 things I'd like to say. One is look at how clean Narragansett Bay is from what it once was, and that's a direct result of clean water projects that we're talking about being implemented. We've become the finance agency for those projects. We we've loaned money upstream, we've loaned money downstream, and I think the Bay is, as Jeremy said, is a great tourist attraction. We don't loan money for economic development purposes, but we clean the environment, and I'm sure there's a direct correlation there someplace that people would want to keep a clean environment and a clean bay.
Yeah. Jeremy, I imagine the zoo itself is a lot more tangible. So many people have seen it; they know full well, what they're getting when they approve the bond. Are you seeing good support amongst your patrons and supporters of the zoo about getting people educated and informed about the value of question 7?
We are. As a matter of fact, we've been promoting it in a very unusual way. We have our Jack-o'-lantern spectacular going on now, and we have a whole Vote Yes on 7 pumpkin display. So we're getting the word out, and people love the zoo. We're the #1 tourist attraction and single family tourist attraction in the state with over 650,000 visitors. So, we are, even though we're located in Providence, we are really a state asset, and everybody has stories about going to the zoo when they were kids, bringing their kids now, bringing their grandkids, and the zoo just has a special place in everybody's heart, and we've gotten a lot of support, but, it's really the votes that count, so we're just making sure we encourage everyone to get out there and vote yes on 7.
Sure. And just so our viewers have a sense, I mean, these are bonds that are backed by the state. The voters are given a choice of voting yes or no, and it's really whether or not voters want to see these projects move forward. Whether or not they want to see the zoo facilities enhanced, or clean water projects by municipalities funded, or brownfields remediation, which is another aspect of question 7, or money dedicated to preserving farmland, which is yet another aspect of 7 that we haven't really talked about. Those are the choices that voters are making when they are voting on 7.
No, that's correct, and you did 2 out of several of them. I was going to do that before it ended.
Please go right ahead. So.
Janet Coit, the director of DEM, isn't with us today, but she makes up the other agency that is a beneficiary of the $53 million. I believe her agency is in for 15, and as you said, brownfields projects, remediation, the stormwater projects that are also in there, recreation grants for cities and towns, going back to my other life, and farmland preservation. So that when you put that together, it really is a healthy community. The bond issue from the park to the zoo to clean water and to cleaning up some of the other items that we all would like to see corrected. And DEM has been a good partner, and Janet Coit and the department has done well.
Terrific. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the show, educating our viewers about the value of voting yes on question 7. And thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen on this channel 3 times each week: Tuesday at 7 p.m., Thursday at 8 p.m., and Saturday at 5 p.m.